Muted.
All right, we're going to go ahead and get started. Welcome everyone to the Environmental Review presentation. In this presentation, we're going to speak about process and expectations for 2016 project sponsors of home and CDBG construction projects. So again, this training is for 2016 home and CDBG. This training will cover information regarding your project and the requirements to reach project completion. You're welcome to ask any questions at any time. However, we ask if you have specific questions related to your project, you can reach out to us after the training. Additionally, if you have specific questions we can't address in this presentation, we'd be happy to respond by email to those questions. My name is Christopher Myers. I'm Preservation Planner from the City of Indianapolis. The other speakers joining me today are Gina Bush-Hayes, Project Manager, and Chase Schulte, CDBG Coordinator. Every HUD-assisted project must be examined to ensure that it does not negatively impact the surrounding environment and that the site itself will not have adverse effects on end users. This comes directly from the Code of Federal Regulations, and throughout this presentation, you might note in the lower left-hand corner, we've included references to those federal regulations in case you're interested in seeing those for yourself. So first, we're going to speak about the Environmental Review Request Form, which is the responsibility of the project sponsors to complete. So we've made some recent updates to the ERR form, and it is required for all projects. Whenever you complete this form as a project sponsor, please send it both to myself, myers@indy.gov, and also to Gina Bush-Hayes at gina.bush.hayes@indy.gov. The city will not accept previous versions of the form, and the current version is dated March 7th, 2016, as of this presentation. We've made some notable changes and improvements from the previous versions. We require 2 recent color photographs, which must be within the last 3 months, barring any substantial changes to the property. So as an example, if Google Street View is from less than 3 months ago and it shows a standing house, but today the house has been demolished or some other substantial change, that photograph will not work. We need this documentation to show us current conditions. Additionally, the form requires project sponsor contact information in case we have questions, and we also require a complete description of work, and there's a reference table that I will just describe in just a moment. So here's the current version of the ERR form. You'll note that it is 5 steps. The first step is to insert your 2 photographs. The second step is to fill in general project information. Step 3 is to complete and submit a FEMA and wetlands map for each project. We've included the websites below, and that should be forwarded to both myself and Gina Bush-Hayes. Step 4 is to complete the description of work. Step 5 is finally to submit your completed ERR form. So on this page, we've got the description of work reference table. This table was created to help the project sponsors fill out the description of work accurately and fully. This helps me to approve your project very quickly. So for a specific example, we get a lot of requests for HVAC equipment replacement and repair. The programmatic agreement that I use to complete these reviews exempts particular kinds of work. If I know that the HVAC work does not include any structural alterations, then it allows me to process your request very quickly. And so in this reference table, project sponsors are able to copy each related description that applies to their project or amend it and place it in their to help me process your request very quickly. Some questions you might have about the ERR form. What if I don't know the complete scope of work at the time that I submit the form? You can provide additional details after submitting the form. The Section 106 review process will be placed on hold in the meantime. How will I know if I'm using the current version of the form? The current version will be uploaded to the city's website. The version date and upload link are included. And also at the bottom of the form itself, we have included a link to the website where you can download the current version. So next, we're going to talk about the Section 106 review process, which is my office's responsibility to complete. Section 106 review is required for all projects that use federal funds, permits, or approvals. This comes from 36 Code of Federal Regulations, Part 800, or CFR, implementation and regulations for Section 106 review. Other CFR codes that relate to this process are 36 CFR Part 68, the Secretary of the Interior Standards, and 36 CFR Part 60, the National Register of Historic Places. And you're welcome to read the regulations. So the City of Indianapolis administers federal funds when applicants, namely CDCs or community development corporations, apply for them. So this would include home funds and CDBG funds. The city has developed a programmatic agreement with the state that helps us comply with 36 CFR Part 800. In this programmatic agreement, certain types of work are exempted from review by the state. Certain types of work automatically require review by the state. This programmatic agreement is on file in our office in case you're interested in reading through it. Just as a note, whenever projects require coordination with the state, they have up to 30 days from receipt of that information to submit their response. So the Section 106 review process concludes in one of three findings. No historic property is affected, no adverse effect or adverse effect with an accompanying memorandum of agreement. So it's important in Section 106 to understand the full scope of work, find the area of potential effects, assess the affected property's eligibility for listing on the National Register, and if National Register eligible or listed properties are adversely affected, it's important in this process to consult with the public and with the state. I'm going to run through just a couple of examples for a Section 106 review. In this example, we have a CDC applying for a homeowner repair roofing. So the project sponsor submits a completed ERR form that includes the photographs of the property front and back, that includes a complete description of work, contact information, and all of the other information required in the form. The city collects details of the scope. So from this form, we'll get a sense of what the existing and proposed roofing material is, where the roofing will take place. So is it the entire house? Is it just a porch? Is it a garage? And we'll also understand if this work includes any changes to the roof pitch or configuration. That helps us determine if the scope meets an exempt activity or if it doesn't. So next, we define the area of potential effects. We assess eligibility and assess those effects. And so the question we need to answer is, will this project affect character-defining features of historic properties? Lastly, we make a determination and issue a finding to the project sponsor. And again, it ends in one of those three findings: no historic property is affected, no adverse effect, or adverse effect. So if in this third step, the project does not affect any character-defining features, we'll typically issue a finding of no historic property is affected. If the project does affect character-defining features, but it doesn't diminish those features, we'll typically issue a finding of no adverse effect. If it does diminish those character-defining features, then we have to issue an adverse effect finding and move forward with consultation. In another specific example, this is a CDC applying for home or CDBG funds to apply towards new construction. So the CDC submits their ERR form again. The city collects those details, including a site plan of the proposed building, elevations of the proposed building, and additional details such as if the project includes any demolition. Next, the city defines the APE, or area of potential effects, assesses eligibility, and assesses the effects of the project on historic properties. This may require a site visit, which can be done in coordination with the project sponsors. And so again, we try to assess if the project affects character-defining features of historic properties. So once the city has collected all this information, we develop a preliminary finding and submit it to the state. Again, whenever we send any information to the state, they have up to 30 days by law to respond. So the city will also send an email update to each project sponsor when we sent that information, and we'll let you know what the state says as soon as we hear back from them. So when we send something to the state, we are asking for their concurrence, questions they might have. If they return requests for additional information, that can add 30 days to the project. So after we've received concurrence from the state, we make a final determination and issue a finding, again, one of those three findings that you see to the lower right. And all of this stems from 36 CFR Part 800. In this last example, this particular project is an adverse effect finding. So it starts with a CDC submitting the ERR form. We collect additional details. The city defines the APE and assesses the effects of the project. Whenever we have a determination of adverse effect finding, that always requires a site visit with the project sponsor to understand all the details of the project, get a better sense of what all work is included in the scope. So we submit, following that, the city submits a preliminary finding of adverse effects to the state, requesting their evaluation and concurrence, which again can take up to 30 days. If the state concurs with our finding of adverse effects, then the city, the state, and the project sponsor come together to consult on the project. The purpose of consulting at this point is to understand if the adverse effects can be avoided. If not, then the state will instruct us to consult with the public and the states to develop a memorandum of agreement, which also adds an additional 30 days. So when we get to that point of developing a memorandum of agreement, all parties consult to execute that MOA to meet 36 CFR Part 800. And in the MOA, there are specific stipulations that different parties are responsible for carrying out in order to mitigate for those adverse effects. Some questions you might have about Section 106 review. Does every project require a Section 106 review? Yes, if it involves federal funds, permits, or approvals, such as home and CDBG funds. How do I know when Section 106 is complete? You have received a finding of no historic properties affected or no adverse effect finding from the City of Indianapolis. An adverse effect finding automatically requires additional consultation. So I've listed here best case scenario timeframe expectations for project sponsors. If the project is exempt, it can take 5 business days. If a project requires sending information to the state, then it can take 45 calendar days. If a project is an adverse effect, it can take 60 calendar days. And if it's any other kind of situation, it can take 14 calendar days. All of these estimates depend on staff workload. And let me stress again that this is best case scenario. There is always the possibility of extenuating circumstances that may extend the Section 106 review timeframe, especially in an adverse effect finding. So next, Gina Bush-Hayes is going to talk about the environmental review process, which she handles for the City of Indianapolis.
Thank you, Chris. I'm Gina Bush-Hayes, and I'm going to discuss the environmental review. As Chris mentioned, to make it easier for project sponsors, you can now send one email to both Chris and I at the same time. It will include the ERR form, color photos, FEMA map, wetland map. Chris will send you a copy of the Section 106 review documentation when it is completed, and me one, and then he'll also send you one too. Steps to create the wetland map. I've listed the steps. You can go to the browser, you can go to the site, FWS.gov Wetlands Data Mapper. Click on the Wetlands Mapper, the blue tab in the middle of the page, accept the terms and conditions, add your address and city, hit print map, position the scale in the map, hit OK, add title to the map, submit the PDF, and save the map to your location, then print the map landscape. The steps to create a FEMA map are a little harder. Go to the site, msc.fema.gov/portal search, enter your address and city, hit View Map, hit Max Zoom Out, hit Make Affirmant, zoom to the area and select the page size and hit Print Area. Then you have to go grab a little pink box and move it to the location of your project. Hit Image File, and then use your right mouse and click your right mouse and click and save the file as a GIF file, and then save Format tab. This way, the TIFF files that you usually make sometimes will they're not as easy or legible to read, but a GIF file is a lot legible, especially if you make it landscape. It'll be large enough so that I can read the map number. Level of review. I review the ERR form to assess the project to determine the level of review needed. The level of the HUD environmental review is based on the type of proposed activity. Activities and their associated level of review are divided into the following categories: exempt activities, categorical exclusions, and environmental assessment. Some of the exempt activities are plans, functions, admin, training. These activities are just assigned an exempt category and do not require review. City staff, not the project sponsor, determines if an activity is exempt. Category exclusions. These are the bulk of my reviews, and they take less than a week once their turn comes up in my queue. They are your home repair projects, usually your roof, your furnace, your HVAC, plumbing, these types of projects. As long as the density is not increased beyond 4 units, or the estimated cost of the rehab or less than 75% of the total estimated cost of replacement or rehab, or if the facilities and improvements are in place and will not change the size or capacity by more than 20%, or if an individual action, a project, or 5 or more housing units developed on scattered sites, and when the sites are more than 2,000 feet apart and are not more than 4 units on any site. An environmental review. What triggers a full assessment? This will take usually up to about a month, especially if historic review needs to be sent to the state for new construction. This is why I would like you to submit your ERR forms the same time to me as Chris, so that I can begin working on your project while it is at the state. These are some of the reasons to trigger a long review. Is if your project has a significant impact on the human environment, the project would remove, demolish, convert, or substantially rehabilitate 2,500 or more existing housing units. The project would provide enough additional water or sewer capacity for 2,500 or more additional housing units, or if it's new construction or a change of land use. Statutory worksheet. My review consists of certifying that a project has complied with the following standards, policies, regulations, and these law authorities listed. Making sure a project does not affect endangered species, clear zone, hazard materials, for example. Environmental assessment factors. Each project is evaluated for its quantitative and qualitative significance of effects of the proposal on the character, features, and resources of the project area. I have to document all the sources are verifiable, credible, traceable, and are supportive sources. Then I must provide copies in my review of each one of these things, backing up that what is stated, as is required to keep the, and I'm also required to keep the files on at the office on for review for the public, and each review can last up to 5 years. This is at a glance the process. And once my assessment is completed and certified by Michelle, I pass it on to Chase or Devin for them to issue an RCA. Next is Chase to explain the updated RCA form.
All right, so I've seen a few of these been issued already. We've updated our RCA boilerplate to kind of reflect a more streamlined version that our rehab specialists can look at out in the field. It includes all of the same information that was on the older RCA, just in a more streamlined format. In addition, we've also added a little checkbox that'll tell our rehab specialists whether or not the site is historic, so that if there's any change orders, they can know to contact the historic office to run those by them. So before you can incur costs, you will, one, need to have submitted your environmental review, the release of funds date, which is on the RCA, the environmental assessment completion date, also on the RCA, and your contract start date. You can only incur costs from the latest of these 3 dates. For most contracts that were executed and have a start date of January 1st, you're going to be most concerned with the environmental assessment completion date, and that depends on when you send your review in and when we finish that review. So quick pop quiz, which date can you incur costs by? If your release of funds date is January 28th of 2016, the environmental assessment completion date was February 13th of 2016, and your contract start date was January 1st of 2016. That would be February 13th, 2016, because that is the latest of those 3 dates. Additionally, all project sponsors need to complete the Davis-Bacon applicability form. This is similar to the environmental review process, but is regarding labor wages. And all of these need to be submitted to Gina Batts-Davenport. If you have not submitted those already, we'll need you to do that now, because we do need a determination regardless of your project if it involves any kind of construction. And here are our contacts. If you have any questions related to the environmental review form, contact Chris or Gina. Any questions related to the RCA, contact myself or Devin Day, the home grant coordinator. Any questions about your review, contact Gina. And any questions about the 106 review, contact Chris. All right, and we'll take some questions now. If anyone has any questions, please type them into the chat box. Okay. So we have a question, if we have an RCA from last year, is it still good? My follow-up question would be, is it issued to the organization that will be currently carrying out the work? If so, yes, it is still good. And also, if the scope of work has not changed, it would still be good. If the scope has changed from, say, home rehab and the house was actually demolished and you want to do new construction, you will need to issue a new RCA. Do we have any other questions? If not, it looks like you all are pros with the environmental review process. We're going to go ahead and conclude the webinar. Thank you all for joining, and we'll post this on our website and in an email after the conclusion. Thank you.